And then, you won't believe this, they sent one ship, one. Ambassador Zyx'tal's secondary breathing sacs puffed in agitation as he addressed the gathered diplomatic corps. His crystalline appendages clinked against his ceremonial drink holder, nearly spilling the bioluminescent liquid inside. The grand hall of the Galactic Conclave buzzed with a mixture of clicking mandibles, whistling breath tubes, and the occasional resonant hum, the alien equivalent of concerned murmuring. The assembled representatives of 17 spacefaring civilizations were engaged in their favorite pastime, trying to make sense of humans. One ship, Ambassador Kretlik of the Hive Prosperity, clicked her mandibles in disbelief. Surely you mean one fleet? No, no. Zyx'tal waved 3 of his sensory stalks in negation. One ship, singular, solo. The absolute minimum number of vessels you can send before it becomes technically incorrect to use the plural form. A ripple of electromagnetic disturbance passed through the gathering as the silicon-based lifeforms expressed their shock. The methane breathers released worried bubbles into their environment suits. Even the energy beings flickered in frequencies associated with confusion. But that's exactly what they did with the Proxima Centauri crisis, rumbled Ambassador Thuk, his massive gelatinous form vibrating with each word. And the Jupiter conjunction. And let's not forget the infamous Betelgeuse incident. Oh, the Betelgeuse incident, several voices chorused in different frequencies and communication methods. Zyx'tal settled his primary sensory cluster into what his species considered a contemplative pose. As official liaison to the human diplomatic corps, I've spent 3 standard cycles trying to understand their methodology. Their explanations are puzzling. He activated the holographic display in the center of the gathering. A series of human ships appeared, each one representing a major mission. Sleek, singular vessels, each unique in design but sharing that distinctly human aesthetic of throwing math and physics into a blender and hoping for the best, as his mentor had once described it. Look at our response to the recent quantum anomaly in Sector 7, Zyx'tal continued. The Centauri Collective sent a fleet of 300 ships. The Hive deployed 1,200 specialized vessels. Even the Singularity monks, who usually avoid physical manifestation, assembled 50 probability vessels. And the humans, prompted an ethereal voice from the energy being contingent. The humans, Zyx'tal's color membranes flickered in what his species used to indicate sarcastic amusement. They're sending the Phoenix, one ship, again. But the risk calculations, protested Ambassador Kretlik, these statistical probabilities, the redundancy protocols. Ah yes, Zyx'tal's tone took on the particular resonance his species used for quoting others. As the human admiral told me, why send 100 ships to do what one good ship can do better? The gathered ambassadors processed this statement with their various appendages, organs, and energy patterns, all expressing degrees of bewilderment. They claim it's about efficiency, Zyx'tal continued, his chromatophores now displaying patterns of bemused frustration. Something about too many cooks in the kitchen, though I'm still unclear on what food preparation has to do with space exploration. Perhaps, suggested Thuk, his gelatinous form rippling thoughtfully, we should establish a committee to study this phenomenon. We could have subcommittees for each aspect of human ship deployment, with auxiliary committees to study the subcommittee's findings and oversight committees to... They'd solve the crisis before we finished our first meeting, Zyx'tal interrupted dryly. With one ship, probably while breaking at least 3 laws of physics we thought were unbreakable. The gathering fell into contemplative silence, broken only by the occasional whir of processing units and the gentle bubbling of methane suits. Somewhere in the distance, a human could be heard laughing, as if at some cosmic joke only their species seemed to understand. Ambassador Zyx'tal's memory crystals hummed as he accessed records of first contact. The hollow projector flickered, showing scenes from that historic day 20 Earth years ago. You have to understand, he explained to the gathered diplomats, when we first detected their approach, we deployed our standard first contact fleet. 300 ships, arranged in the traditional greeting formation, passed down through 12,000 cycles of spacefaring tradition. The hologram shifted, showing the massive alien armada, ships arranged in perfect geometric patterns, each vessel's position calculated to demonstrate both peaceful intentions and technological superiority, a display that had successfully facilitated first contact with dozens of species. And then, Zyx'tal's color membranes rippled with remembered disbelief. The humans arrived in, computer, display the human first contact vessel. The image changed to show a single ship. The gathered ambassadors leaned forward, various sensory organs focusing on the vessel that had changed galactic society's understanding of space travel. The Odyssey, Thuk rumbled, his gelatinous form vibrating with something like reverence. I've studied the records. 1 ship, crew of 12, and more jury-rigged modifications than a Kzt's probability engine. Exactly, Zyx'tal's secondary appendages waved in excitement. Our fleet commanders nearly had simultaneous nervous breakdowns, all 3 of their brains. Here we were, presenting the most impressive display of coordinated space travel ever assembled, and the humans show up in what looked like someone had welded a quantum drive to a habitat module and called it a day. Ambassador Kretlik chittered thoughtfully. The Hive remembers this day. We had just joined the Galactic Conclave ourselves. Our analysts spent decades trying to understand the strategic implications. Surely, we thought, this must be some elaborate deception. The real human fleet must be hiding somewhere. The Quantum Collective had the same thought, hummed one of the energy beings. We scanned 11 dimensions for hidden vessels. And found nothing, Zyx'tal completed the thought, because there was nothing to find. The humans had literally crossed the gulf between stars with a single vessel, while we were all building fleets that could have populated small moons. The hologram cycled through images of various alien first contact fleets, the Hive's swarm of identical ships, each specialized for a specific function, the crystalline lattice formation of the Centauri vessels, the probability cloud of quantum collective ships existing in multiple states simultaneously. Look at our approaches, Zyx'tal continued. The Hive builds thousands of specialized vessels. The Centauri believe in overwhelming force through numbers. The Quantum Collective hedges its bets across multiple realities. Even the Silicon Consciousness, with all their computational power, refuses to launch missions without at least 50 redundant vessels. It's logical, protested a silicon-based representative, their crystalline form refracting light in patterns of defensive reasoning. Multiple ships provide redundancy, specialization, and distributed risk management. It's basic space travel theory. Tell that to the humans, Zyx'tal replied. I recently asked their new admiral about this approach. You know what she said? She laughed, actually laughed, and told me, why would I want to keep track of 100 ships when I can barely keep my crew from trying to surf solar flares for fun? A ripple of electromagnetic disturbance passed through the gathering, the closest thing to a collective groan that such a diverse group could manage. But the efficiency ratings, the silicon representative's crystal structure, vibrated in distress. Our calculations show that fleet-based approaches are 47.3% more effective in crisis response, 82.6% more reliable in exploration scenarios, and yet, Zyx'tal interrupted, who reached the quantum anomaly in Sector 9 first? Who successfully navigated the void storms? Who made first contact with the deep space intelligences? The humans, the gathering chorused in various forms of communication. With 1 ship each time, Zyx'tal emphasized, they have this saying, quality over quantity, though I'm still not convinced they understand either concept the way we do. Ambassador Kretlik's antennae twitched in thought. Perhaps we're approaching this wrong. The Hive has noticed that human ships are never quite the same. Each vessel is unique. Like their crews, Thuk added, bubbling thoughtfully. No standardization, no uniform approach. It's as if they're purposely introducing chaos into the equation. Chaos? Zyx'tal's color membranes displayed patterns of amused resignation. Have you seen their mission planning meetings? I attended one last week. Their solution to every problem seems to be hit it with science until something works and hope the laws of physics are more like guidelines anyway. The gathering absorbed this information with various expressions of horror, fascination, and reluctant admiration. In the background, the hologram continued cycling through images of human ships, each one a unique testament to their species' peculiar approach to space exploration. The peaceful contemplation of human peculiarities was shattered by the arrival of Admiral N. Vex, their chromatophores flashing emergency patterns. The Admiral's entrance caused such a disturbance that several energy beings temporarily lost coherence. The anomaly has grown, Envex announced without preamble. The holoprojector shifted to display a region of space that simply shouldn't be. Reality itself seemed to fold and unfold there, like origami being crafted by a madman with too many dimensions at his disposal. Current size? Zyx'tal asked, his sensory stalks rigid with concern. 12 solar systems and expanding. The Hive Prosperity's outer colonies are evacuating. 3 of the Quantum Collective's probability nexuses have already been consumed. Envex's color membranes flickered with distress patterns. We're looking at a Class 1 reality dissolution event. The gathered ambassadors erupted in a cacophony of worried communications. Class 1 RDEs were theoretical catastrophes, the kind of disaster that spawned religions and extinction events in equal measure. Order, Thuk's massive form, vibrated at a frequency that demanded attention. We must approach this systematically. The combined fleet protocol was established for exactly this type of crisis. Ambassador Kretlik activated her own data projection. The Hive has already mobilized 2,000 specialized vessels. Each ship carries quantum stabilization equipment designed to... Won't work, interrupted a new voice. The crowd parted to reveal a human walking into the chamber, carrying what appeared to be a cup of coffee. Commander Jack Chen of the Earth Defense Force looked entirely too relaxed for someone discussing the potential end of reality. What do you mean, won't work? Kretlik's mandibles clicked in agitation. These ships represent the combined technological achievement of 17 species. Yeah, and that's the problem. Chen took a sip of his coffee. You're thinking bigger. More ships, more equipment, more everything. But this anomaly, it feeds on complexity. Every ship you send is just going to make it grow faster. Envex's chromatophores displayed patterns of skepticism. Our calculations are perfect, I'm sure, Chen agreed, for normal space, but this thing is about as normal as a quantum physicist at a poetry slam. He paused. Trust me, I've seen both. The physicist was actually more coherent than this anomaly. Then what do you propose? Zyx'tal asked, already dreading the answer. Chen grinned. We're sending in the Prometheus. The chamber erupted again. Thuk's gelatinous form rippled with disbelief. One ship, against a Class 1 RDE? That's not just putting all your eggs in one basket, that's throwing the basket into a black hole and hoping for an omelette. First of all, Chen replied, great use of human metaphors. You've been studying. Second, the Prometheus isn't just any ship. We built her specifically for weird stuff like this. Define weird stuff, Kretlik demanded. You know, the usual reality breaches, dimensional anomalies, places where the laws of physics go on vacation. We equipped her with what we call a quantum uncertainty drive. A what? Several voices asked simultaneously. It's like... Chen searched for an explanation. Imagine Schrodinger's cat got really ambitious and decided to build a starship. The drive exists in a state of quantum uncertainty, which means reality can't quite figure out what to do with it. And if reality can't figure it out, neither can the anomaly, Zyx'tal finished, his sensory stalks quivering with sudden understanding. You're going to confuse it to death. Bingo! Chen pointed at the ambassador with his coffee cup. The anomaly feeds on complexity? Fine. We'll give it something so simple it circles right back around to being complex. One ship, operating on principles that make quantum physicists cry. The gathered diplomats processed this information through their various cognitive apparatuses. The silicon-based representatives were running probability calculations so intense they were starting to glow. But the risk, Envex protested, if you fail. Then we fail, Chen shrugged. But if we succeed spectacularly. And let's be honest, that's kind of our thing. The combined fleet could at least provide backup, Kretlik suggested. We have protocols. Your protocols are exactly what we're trying to avoid, Chen explained. This is like performing surgery. You don't send in 1,000 doctors with 1,000 scalpels. You send in one really good surgeon who knows what they're doing, or in our case, one really good ship with a crew crazy enough to think this might work. The holoprojector displayed the Prometheus. Unlike the sleek, standardized designs of alien vessels, it looked like someone had asked a child to draw a spaceship, then given that drawing to engineers who took it as a challenge. Reality seemed to bend slightly around its hull, as if even the holoprojector was having trouble deciding exactly what it was looking at. We launch in 6 hours, Chen announced. Feel free to watch from a safe distance, just don't get too close. Last time we fired up the uncertainty drive, 3 different quantum physics textbooks spontaneously rewrote themselves. As the human commander turned to leave, Zyx'tal called after him, "Commander Chen, you do realize this plan is, by any rational standard, completely insane?" Chen's grin widened. "Ambassador, if humans only did things that met rational standards, we'd still be arguing about whether fire was too spicy to be trusted." He raised his coffee cup in a salute. "Sometimes the craziest solution is the only one that makes sense." The gathered ambassadors watched him leave, their various appendages, organs, and energy patterns all expressing degrees of resignation. They had learned long ago that once humans decided on a course of action, particularly an impossible one, the best approach was to stand back and prepare to rewrite the laws of physics. Again, Captain Diana Chen stood in the Prometheus's command center, which looked less like a traditional bridge and more like someone had challenged a mad scientist to build a spaceship control room using spare parts from a quantum mechanics lab and a vintage arcade. Holographic displays floated at odd angles, occasionally phase-shifting between dimensions when the quantum uncertainty field hiccuped. "Status report," she called out, watching her crew work with the controlled chaos that had become their trademark. "Quantum uncertainty drive is running at peak uncertainty," reported Lieutenant Rodriguez from his station, which seemed to exist in slightly different locations depending on how you looked at it. "We're simultaneously ready and not ready to launch, which means we're right on schedule. Engineering reports all systems are functioning at maximum theoretical impossibility," added Commander Park, her fingers dancing across a keyboard that occasionally turned into a theremin. "The probability matrix is holding steady at who knows, and the reality stabilizers are destabilizing exactly as planned." Diana nodded, suppressing a smile. After 3 years commanding the Prometheus, she'd learned that the best crew wasn't the one that followed the rulebook. It was the one that used the rulebook as a starting point for creative interpretation. "Dr. Thompson," she called to their chief scientist, who was busy arguing with a quantum probability calculator that seemed to be giving him sass. "How's our approach vector looking?" "Well," Thompson scratched his beard thoughtfully, "if we consider the anomaly as a 4-dimensional construct with 11-dimensional properties manifesting in 3-dimensional space, we should probably approach it sideways through yesterday." "Temporal mechanics giving you trouble again?" Diana asked. "Not trouble exactly," Thompson grinned. "More like creative opportunities. I've got our temporal compensators set to treat time more like a suggestion than a hard rule. Should give us some wiggle room if things get weird." "When things get weird," corrected Lieutenant Wong from the tactical station, "this is a human ship. Weird is our default setting." The Prometheus itself seemed to hum in agreement. Unlike the rigid, specialized designs of alien vessels, the ship had been built with adaptation in mind. Its hull was composed of smart metal that could reconfigure itself on the fly. Internal spaces could be reorganized at a moment's notice. Even the ship's computer systems operated on quantum principles that made traditional AI engineers wake up screaming. "Run through the pre-launch checklist," Diana ordered. "And yes, I know the checklist exists in a quantum superposition of states. Run through all of them." "Schrodinger's checklist coming up," Rodriguez quipped. "Let's see. Hull integrity is both perfect and slightly questionable. Quantum shields are operating at paradoxical efficiency. Reality anchors are secure mostly. The probability drive is ready to make statisticians cry." "Life support?" Diana asked. "Functioning normally," Park reported, then paused. "Though normal on this ship is a relative term, we're breathing air that might technically be from next Tuesday." Diana walked around the bridge, checking on each station personally. The crew of the Prometheus wasn't chosen for their ability to follow protocol. They were chosen for their ability to improvise when protocol went out the window, which it did approximately every other Tuesday. "Remember, people," she addressed her crew, "we're about to attempt something that 17 alien species with thousands of ships think is impossible. They've got fleets, protocols, and enough computational power to calculate pi to the last digit. But we've got something better," Wong interjected with a grin. "That's right," Diana nodded. "We've got human ingenuity, a ship that breaks physics for fun, and most importantly, no idea that we can't do this." The bridge crew shared knowing looks. They'd all been chosen for their unique combination of brilliant expertise and comfortable relationship with impossibility. Where alien crews sought perfection through repetition and redundancy, the crew of the Prometheus excelled at adapting on the fly. Final systems check, Diana ordered. Thompson, is your latest reality theorem ready? Ready as it'll ever be, Thompson replied, patting a device that looked like it had been built from spare parts and optimism. If my calculations are correct, and they're quantum calculations so they're simultaneously correct and incorrect, this should let us communicate with the anomaly. You built a device to talk to a tier in reality, Park asked. More or less, mostly less, but it should work, probably. The math checks out in at least 3 dimensions. Diana checked the ship's chronometer, which was currently displaying time in what appeared to be interpretive dance. 5 minutes to launch. Rodriguez, warm up the uncertainty drive. Park, make sure our reality anchors are as secure as they can be while being intentionally insecure. Wong, keep those quantum shields fluctuating randomly. We don't want the anomaly getting a good read on us. As her crew worked, Diana took a moment to appreciate the organized chaos that was a human starship in action. Where alien vessels operated with precise, predetermined responses, the Prometheus was designed for the unexpected. Every system had backup systems, and those backups had backups, not because they were meant to provide redundancy, but because nobody was quite sure which approach would work best when reality started getting creative. 2 minutes to launch, she announced. Let's show the galaxy why humans send 1 ship instead of 1,000. Sometimes the best solution isn't the most obvious one, it's the one crazy enough to work. On board the combined fleet's observation vessel, Ambassador Zyx'tal watched the Prometheus prepare for launch. The human ship's quantum field fluctuations were giving the sensors fits. Every reading came back as simultaneously possible and impossible. They're actually going through with this, Vex muttered, their chromatophores displaying patterns of nervous anticipation. 1 ship against a reality-ending anomaly. The launch sequence began with what alien observers could only describe as controlled chaos. The Prometheus's engines ignited, though ignited might not have been the right word, for something that appeared to be burning probability itself as fuel. Quantum uncertainty drive engaging, came Commander Chen's voice over the comm. Reality distortion fields at maximum ambiguity. We're either about to make history or become a very interesting physics problem. The alien observers watched as the Prometheus began its approach. The ship's hull seemed to shimmer, sometimes appearing to be in slightly different positions simultaneously, as if it couldn't quite decide where it wanted to exist. Their approach vector is all wrong, Kretlik clicked in distress. They're going to... The Prometheus didn't so much fly toward the anomaly as it convinced space that it had always been closer to its destination. Distance appeared to become more of a suggestion than a rule. Impossible, breathed a silicon-based observer, their crystalline form vibrating with confusion. They're violating at least 7 laws of physics. 8, actually, corrected Chen's cheerful voice over the comm. We're going for a new record. The anomaly, a writhing mass of twisted spacetime that had been steadily consuming everything in its path, seemed to pause. For the first time since its appearance, its expansion slowed. First contact with anomaly in 3, 2, 1. Chen's voice crackled. Actually, make that now, or possibly 5 minutes ago. Time's getting a bit fuzzy on our end. The assembled aliens watched in fascination as the Prometheus engaged with the anomaly. Where their fleets would have attempted to contain and neutralize the phenomenon through sheer force and numbers, the human ship appeared to be dancing with it. Are they confusing it? Zyx'tal asked incredulously. Quantum uncertainty field engaging with anomaly structure, reported the Prometheus. We're matching its reality warping effects with our own, like fighting fire with fire, except we're fighting chaos with chaos. The anomaly's expansion had completely halted now. Its edges seemed to ripple with what almost looked like confusion, if such a thing were possible for a tear in reality. It's working, and Vex's color membranes displayed patterns of disbelief. Their completely illogical approach is actually working. Of course it's working, Chen's voice came back, slightly distorted as if he was speaking from multiple points in time simultaneously. Sometimes the best way to deal with something that doesn't make sense is to make even less sense than it does. The Prometheus continued its bizarre dance with the anomaly, its quantum field somehow matching and countering the reality warping effects. The alien observers' sensors were reporting readings that their computers simply refused to process, claiming that the math involved would require dividing by 0, while simultaneously multiplying by infinity. They're not trying to fight it, Zyx'tal realized suddenly. They're not even trying to contain it, they're adapting to it. First rule of handling chaos, Chen responded. Don't try to control it. Just convince it that your brand of chaos is more interesting than its own. The assembled aliens watched in stunned silence as humanity's singular approach began to prove its worth. Perhaps they were beginning to realize there was something to be said for quality over quantity after all. Well, that's not supposed to happen, Commander Park announced with the calm of someone who had long since accepted that supposed to was more of a quaint suggestion than a rule. The Prometheus shuddered as reality buckled around it. The anomaly, apparently tired of being outmaneuvered by human chaos, had decided to change the rules of the game. Multiple warning systems activated simultaneously, some of them warning about things that technically hadn't happened yet. Status report, Captain Diana barked, gripping her command chair as the ship phased partially through its own hull. The anomaly is adapting, Thompson shouted from his station, which was now floating 3 feet above the deck. It's copying our quantum uncertainty patterns and amplifying them. We're getting cascade failures across all probability matrices. Outside, the combined fleet was scrambling to respond. Their carefully coordinated formations dissolved into confusion as the amplified chaos began affecting their ships. The Hive fleet is reporting critical systems failures, Rodriguez reported, reading from a display that kept changing languages. The quantum collective's probability drives are going into recursive loops. The silicon consciousness vessels are experiencing, wait, is that even possible? Given that we just saw one of their ships turn into a cloud of confused mathematics, I'm going with yes, Wong replied. Diana watched as the alien fleets attempted to regroup. Their protocols, designed for every conceivable emergency, were falling apart in the face of inconceivable chaos. Thousands of ships, millions of crew members, all trying to coordinate a response while reality itself was rewriting the rules of coordination. Captain, Thompson called out, his voice unusually serious, we've got bigger problems. The anomaly isn't just copying our uncertainty field, it's learning from it. At this rate, it'll achieve consciousness in about 3 minutes, or last Tuesday. Time's getting weird again. A conscious reality warping anomaly, Park asked. That's not good, right? Depends on your definition of good, Thompson replied. From a scientific perspective, it's fascinating. From a continuing to exist in a universe that makes sense perspective, not so much. Diana processed this information, watching as the alien fleets continued their futile attempts to impose order on chaos. Their strength had always been in numbers, in redundancy, in having a backup plan for every backup plan, but now those very strengths were working against them. Right, she decided, if it's learning from our chaos, let's teach it something new. Park, initiate protocol Omega Omega paradox. The bridge crew fell silent. Protocol Omega Omega paradox wasn't just thinking outside the box, it was pretending the box never existed in the first place. Captain, Rodriguez said carefully, that protocol was written as a joke during a party, after someone brought out the quantum-infused tequila. Exactly, Diana grinned. What better way to confuse an entity that's learning to think than to do something that doesn't make sense even by our standards? The quantum uncertainty drive wasn't designed to handle that kind of paradox, Park warned. We'll be flying by the seat of our pants. When aren't we? Diana countered. Thompson, reverse the polarity of the neutron flow. That's not actually a thing, Thompson pointed out. I know, do it anyway. As the crew scrambled to implement a protocol that had been conceived as a joke, the anomaly continued to grow more powerful. The alien fleets were in full retreat now, their carefully coordinated responses having devolved into barely organized chaos. Initiating protocol Omega Omega paradox, Park announced. Reality anchors disengaging, probability matrix inverting, quantum field, doing something that's making the laws of physics cry. The Prometheus began to vibrate at frequencies that shouldn't have existed. Its hull shifted through colors that hadn't been invented yet. The quantum uncertainty field collapsed in on itself, then expanded outward in patterns that made topology experts question their life choices. It's working, Thompson exclaimed. The anomaly is trying to process what we're doing, but since what we're doing makes no sense even to us. Sometimes, Diana said, watching as their impossible maneuver began to take effect, the best way to win isn't to play the game better than your opponent, it's to play a completely different game that only you know the rules to. The Prometheus continued its calculated descent into deliberate impossibility, proving once again that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in having the most ships or the best plans. It was in being willing to try something so monumentally absurd that even chaos itself couldn't keep up. In the aftermath of what would come to be known as the day reality blinked, the grand hall of the Galactic Conclave was unusually quiet. The assembled ambassadors watched as Captain Diana Chen presented her mission report, which somehow managed to violate both the laws of physics and common sense simultaneously. "So let me get this straight," Ambassador Zyx'tal said, his color membranes displaying patterns of bewildered acceptance. "You defeated a consciousness-developing reality anomaly by confusing it to death? More like we confused it into friendship," Diana corrected. "Once we implemented Protocol Omega Paradox, the anomaly tried to understand what we were doing, but since what we were doing made no sense even to us, it eventually gave up and decided to become a quantum computational research center instead." "You turned a reality-ending threat into a science project?" Kretlik's mandibles clicked rapidly in disbelief. "Why not? It was already really good at breaking the laws of physics. We just gave it a productive outlet." Diana shrugged. "Now it's helping us develop new theories of quantum mechanics. Though I should warn you, some of these theories suggest that pi might actually be a rectangular number." The gathered aliens processed this information through their various cognitive apparatuses. The silicon-based representatives had given up trying to run probability calculations and were simply accepting that sometimes the improbable was more reliable than the logical. "We had thousands of ships," Envex mused, their chromatophores showing patterns of dawning understanding, countless contingency plans, redundancies for our redundancies, and yet one human ship with a crew crazy enough to implement a protocol written during a party. "Sometimes less is more," Diana offered. "When you have 1,000 ships, you have to coordinate 1,000 responses. But one ship, one crew? We can adapt, change course, or completely rewrite our approach in seconds, or possibly before we even started, depending on how you look at temporal mechanics." Thuk's gelatinous form rippled thoughtfully. "The combined fleet strength has always been in numbers, in having a solution for every possibility. But you humans, you don't try to have all the answers, you just make sure you can come up with new answers quickly." "Exactly," Diana nodded. "Why prepare for every possibility when you can just get really good at handling impossibilities?" The gathering fell into contemplative silence. Generations of spacefaring tradition, built on the principle of overwhelming force and redundancy, were being re-evaluated in light of humanity's success. "Perhaps," Zyx'tal suggested, his sensory stalks waving in amusement, "we've been looking at this wrong all along. We saw your single-ship approach as primitive, as putting all your eggs in one basket. But it's not about the number of baskets, is it? It's about how quickly you can weave a new one when you need it. Or about realizing that maybe you don't need a basket at all," Diana added. "Sometimes you just need to convince the eggs that floating in midair is more interesting than being in a basket." Ambassador Kretlik rose, her mandibles clicking in what had become the Galactic Conclave's official sound of resigned acceptance of human methods. The Hive Prosperity moves to establish a new doctrine of fleet operations incorporating flexibility and approach. The Quantum Collective seconds this motion, hummed an energy being. "Though we request that Protocol Omega Paradox be explained to us in great detail, preferably while we're all slightly intoxicated, as that seems to be the only way it might make sense." As the gathered species began to debate the merits of adaptation over preparation, Diana smiled. The galaxy was learning what humanity had known all along, that sometimes the best solution wasn't the most obvious one, the most numerous one, or even the most logical one. Sometimes the best solution was the one that worked, even if nobody could quite explain why, or particularly wanted to.